Alright, so basically here at SoundLogic we have three main tracking areas. We have the live room, which is the one we're in right now, and then a wood room, which is basically a vocal booth, and then a dead room, which in the dead room no sound will bounce around. This room is 36 feet wide with 16-foot ceilings, and so that gives a lot of space that you can play around with. Typically, what I'll do is set drums up right here and then gobo off the glass and the piano with these gobos, and then have some gobos set up front. By using all these gobos, and sometimes carpet, you can really control this room and control the amount of echo that's in it. We also have Auralex pads here on the walls that you can take or move around or basically put wherever you want. So what I want to do right now is to explain to you or demonstrate the sounds of each of these rooms naturally with nothing in them. So what I'm going to do is clap my hands in each room and we're going to listen to the room. So again, this is the live room. Alright, so now let's head into this wood room and see how it sounds. Okay, so now we're in our wooden room, which is kind of our medium sounding room. What we've done is just use pine planks to cover all of these walls, except for this big glass door here. Another feature of this room is that we have a big trap right up here, and it goes in about 4 inches up to the ceiling, which is a blown-in popcorn ceiling. This room sounds really good for acoustic instruments. You just kind of have to figure it out. With this big glass here, that obviously becomes an obstacle, but we had an upright bass player in here, which I never would have expected that would have worked. It was facing the corner of all things, and it sounded really good. So that's kind of what it's all about, is just finding the right room for the right instrument. So just like I've done with the other rooms, let's clap our hands. You can hear there's some decay, certainly nothing like the live room and nothing like the vocal booth. Alright, so this is our smallest room here at the studio, and basically it's just a little vocal booth. What makes this room so dead are these Auralex panels that we have on the wall, and basically they are 2 by 4 foot sheets of Auralex foam, just wrapped in material to make them look nice. This room is really cool for guitars if you want that really dry, crunchy, clean, direct sound of a guitar amp. Sometimes vocals, like a pop or a rap vocal, if you want just a real dry, no effects, in-your-face sound, this is the room to do it in. So let me clap my hands in here and we'll see how it sounds. Just like most other pro studios, something you should notice is that there really aren't many 90-degree angles here in any of these walls, and that was a big part in the planning of the construction here at the studio. We have a big cathedral ceiling in this room, and something I want you to notice, I'm a piano player, so I really spend a lot of time on this. The arch of the ceiling actually matches the arch of the lid. And because of that math, I know that if you set a microphone out 17 feet that way, it's kind of the sweet spot for the piano. Also want you to notice, even here, this is a corner that we just couldn't figure out, and I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but this little wall right here even angles in kind of like that. We were getting a bunch of phase cancellation and weird stuff with that wall being straight up, and so just that little space of a wall we had to angle back so that the sound wouldn't bounce into itself. The main wall here separating the live room and the control room is also angled. I think it's about a 30-degree angle. And let me show you how each wall here in the studio is made. For every wall that you see here in the studio, there are actually 2 walls, and this is of course how we keep sound isolation. And also, we're in a big metal building in a big field, and I was so worried about the rain hitting the metal roof. I thought for sure we were going to have to do some extra construction, but this formula works perfectly. For every wall that you see here, there are 2 layers of 5/8 sheetrock, basically glued to each other, and then a layer of 703 insulation, and all of that is attached to a 2x8 wall. And of course, in the 2x8 wall, we have the studs filled with insulation. And after that is a 3-inch air gap where just air, nothing else. And so that consists of one wall, and then we have another wall basically flipped around backwards. And so we have a solid mass, then a bunch of insulation, then a solid mass. And that is by far the best way to stop sound traveling both from room to room and also outside of the building. Alright, so let's talk about the windows for a second. Windows are made out of 2 totally separate 1/4-inch panes of glass. And it's breakaway glass, just like you would find in a radio station. It's pretty solid, pretty expensive stuff. What I want you to notice is that the windows are sitting in the jamb kind of at a V angle, like this. And the reason for that is that, well, 2 reasons actually. One, you don't want any 90-degree angles. And I'll give you an example. If I had a microphone right here and I was singing, I wouldn't want the sound of my voice bouncing directly off of this back into the microphone. And the other reason is that anytime you have 2 panes of glass, if they're parallel to each other, you're going to have a huge glare, and it would be next to impossible for me to see in the control room and vice versa. Alright, so the floor in the control room is actually built on neoprene strips, and then there's a grid system, which is basically just a 2x8 stud floor grid, and then the laminate floor, the wood floor, is actually on top of that. And we'll do that for a couple reasons. The sound of the room, obviously, and also the isolation between the control room and the live room. And then the grid system is to run all the cables. For example, the cables from the console to the producer's rack, or the console to the tape machine, or whatever the case may be, just so you don't have to see any wires anywhere. One thing about the floating floor in there is that it does not touch any of the walls anywhere, and that's something that's very important. It has to be freestanding. If the floating floor were to touch the wall, sound would transfer from the floor directly to the wall because you'd have a solid mass touching a solid mass, and that would kind of defeat the whole purpose. But if you look around the edge of the rooms underneath the molding, you'll see that the floor is totally independent from the rest of the room. Alright, so let's check out the doors. They're pretty impressive. Alright, so these doors weigh over 200 pounds each, and hanging them was quite the challenge, I'll tell you. But I made these myself, and basically they're 2 solid core wood doors. In between is a very thin sheet of lead, and then just a ton of silicone and some big screws. You can see the hinges on these suckers are really doing the trick. So the sound is obviously not going to get through these 3-inch thick doors. The sound is going to get through the door jamb. And come on over and I'll show you some of the things we did to try and stop that. And so we've done some things that make this door pretty airtight, which is the goal in soundproofing. This is basically just a furring strip, a 1x1, and it holds this weather stripping, and that's all it is, a simple weather stripping. In front of that is this silicone kind of rubber-like substance, which really seems to grab the door and hold it in place, hold it pushed up against the weather stripping. And we spent a lot of time making, well, experimenting, working around, seeing what works best to hold this door in place, and this seems to do the trick. A couple months ago, I asked Auralex to come in and help me as we rebuilt the control room here, and you can see that we've got their space couplers and space arrays, and they have done just a tremendous amount of soaking up the sound and controlling the sound waves in this room. There is another piece here on EQTV about studio construction, and if you're interested in these at all, I suggest you check them out because you can really learn how they did change the room of the sound and why they work so well. Well, thanks for taking the time to check out my place today. I've hoped you've learned something that you can do yourself or picked up on some tricks. If you'd like to learn more about SoundLogic, check us out on the net. That's soundlogicrecording.com. And with any of my articles or any EQTV pieces, feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Might be a while before I get back to you, but I love hearing from people. My email address is jeff@LafayetteStudio.com. See you next time.